Seeing the show from a distance, they took it for a profitable target, and the Blackstone circus had weathered its share of raids and stick-ups from people who didn't understand that circus gold is never true, that circus diamonds are always paste, and that circus beauty is at best a sham to fool the townies. At worst, it's an outright lie. And that was true of most of the wagons, which were held together by hope, baling wire, and sheer cussed stubbornness. If the wagons fell apart, the circus would stop moving. If the circus stopped moving, it would no longer be a circus. Simple as that. So they slapped paint over cracks in the wood, and they repaired what could be repaired. And half the time when raiders came riding down out the hills set on making mischief, the bold highwaymen somehow found themselves with hammers in their hands, helping to repair a broken axle. They were paid, of course, in food and entertainment, and whatever small riches the circus had been able to scrape together since the last time it had been attacked. And sometimes a man new to the highwayman's trade would burn a wagon out of an odd sense of obligation, filling the air with the smell of burning mold and blistering paint. But the quietly reproachful eyes of the circus folk seemed to have an extra weight by firelight, and rare was the man anywhere in the West who would harm a traveling show twice. The world was dark enough. Why darken it further by destroying one of the few amusements that served rich and poor alike? So the circus rolled on, the lookouts keeping a weather eye on the hills, while most of the show seized the rare opportunity to sleep between towns. Even if the human dangers would let them be, there were always things to fear out in the open. Cougars and wolves, and worse, to hear some of the roustabouts mutter in the night. At the head of the wagon train was Nathaniel Blackstone himself, owner of the show, reins in his hands as he guided his horses down the trail. Some people believed he never slept at all, that like his circus, he was a shark, and that if he stopped moving, he would die. Others knew that he was flesh and blood like any other man, a born showman, yes, who had no trouble encouraging his own mystique even among the people who worked for him, but still a man. He slept when the show was stopped. He slept in the early afternoons when the crowds had yet to come in, but the work of setting up had been finished. He slept in the space between sentences, where no one needed him to make their decisions for them, where, for good or ill, he could rest. Rumor was he had a wife somewhere on the coast, in one of the green places where neither man nor beast came a-praying, that he had a child, or two, or as many as 4, and that one day, when gray strands started to appear in that great black mustache of his, he'd be sending his trusted right hand to ride for Oregon and bring his eldest back to the show, ready to begin training his heir in the ways of the road. Rumor also was that he was a clockwork man built by the master of another, fancier show, and that he'd run away from his creator the same way those occasional foundling children ran away from their creators, choosing freedom and uncertainty over captivity and a life where all their choices would come from someone else. Nathaniel Blackstone encouraged the rumors, all of them, no matter how ludicrous. If his people believed him to be a monster or a madman or a maestro, that could only enhance his reputation, and hence the reputation of the show as a whole, in the small towns they rolled through. Their route was a cartographer's masterwork of trails, roads, and semi-safe paths, all connecting the settlements they served. A circus's map was one of its greatest treasures. Some of these routes no other show in this part of the country knew. Without maps, the wagons couldn't get place to place fast enough to make a profit. Keep moving. Stay alive. Behind his wagon came the hulking shapes of the equipment wagons, largest in the train, which hauled the upright posts of the various tents, the collapsed game booths, the vast, billowing canopy of the big top. When Nathaniel thought of the tent, he always saw it in silken stripes, high enough to beat its banners against the moon. The truth was tamer, 15 feet at its highest point, patched canvas painted in irregular zigzags, but it was still beautiful when the lights were strung around.